Anything else? Inflation? Oh, for inflation, I took the inflation index. So 100, 107, these are the actual prices, the price index, CPI. And you see 115, 29. So from 27 to 28, we have a huge inflation. And then 32, 36, 41, we have a small inflation. Right?
Can I ask a philosophical question?
All right, not too big philosophy, not
Okay,
Kantian philosophy. Or Hegel. So what's the philosophical question?
If you look at the microeconomic numbers of Bulgaria, they are better than Greece, for example.
Yes, of course.
If you look at the well-being of Bulgarians,
Yes.
with the previous numbers that we were looking, poverty, blah, 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 it's
Yeah.
worse.
Correct.
So what's the story here? What
The story is very simple. Oh, the story is amazingly simple. In '97, Bulgaria went totally bankrupt. People were living on $30 a month. Bulgarians were making $30 a month, and Greece was making $300 a month. And Greece was 10 times better, okay? And as Greek economy has been doing better, we've been catching up to Greece so much better, okay? And now the Greek economy is going down, and we're just holding, okay? You understand? So the explanations, we start from extraordinarily low base. We're catching up. So there is a good chance, not a forecast, but there's a good chance that in 2 or 4 or 5 years, the overall standard of living of Bulgaria, as we hold, and the Greek standard falls, becomes similar, or we could possibly become better. Now, here's what I'm hearing. I'm going to, Bulgarians will know, Petric. And I like to go to Sandanski. And here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing a lot of Macedonian Greeks coming to Bulgaria for jobs. Well, that's absurd. For 10, 15 years we had Bulgarians going for better jobs and salaries in Greece. Now Greeks coming to Bulgaria. When I was in Bansk, I was hearing Greeks going to Macedonia. Is that true for jobs and getting employment there? So, well, Macedonia is better than, Greeks, so a lot of people live there. So now Greeks are leaving the country and coming to Bulgaria for jobs. So the answer is yes, we've been catching up, and yes, standards are falling, and maybe within 2 or 3 years we're actually going to cross, and we could possibly be better. I mean, we don't know. We don't know how far the Greek government will go. Okay.
So those numbers are in euros or in leva?
Honestly, I have to really look. It says
national currency.
Yeah, it says national currency, and our national currency you divide by 2 to calculate in euro. So here's per capita. Per capita of 6,700 in Bulgarian currency means about
3,000 euros.
3,000 euro means about 300, 350 euro per month per person, okay? So for a family of 3 means about, I don't know, about 1,000 euro or so. All right, any questions on Bulgaria?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes?
These are KPIs, economic performance indicators.
The macroeconomic
In
indicators.
business, you put targets in your KPIs, and these targets are supposed to bring you profitability. Is
Correct.
there a model here? What are the targets that will improve the well-being of a nation, for example?
Right, the targets are always 3. Every nation starts with the 3 primary targets. Number 1 is economic growth. You want the economy to grow. Second target, number 2 for every government in the world is usually employment. That's why they talk about jobs. And the third target is usually inflation. And when the government's got to make a choice or has got to sacrifice employment or inflation, governments always choose to sacrifice inflation if it will bring more jobs or if it will increase growth and employment. So economic growth, employment, and inflation are the 3 primary macroeconomic targets. But you want to accomplish these 3 targets, if possible, with a balanced fiscal policy, meaning without too much debt, with a balanced trade, or what's called foreign economic policy, current account and trade account balance. Because if you achieve these by skyrocketing debt and by skyrocketing trade deficits and current account deficits, you haven't accomplished much. You've just traded the short-term stability for a longer-term problem. All right? So, if you have fiscal deficit and trade deficit, it's unstable. We call it, it is not sustainable. You can't keep doing this. You can't keep skyrocketing debt like the Greek government did, because it will end up in disaster. We're okay. We can possibly avoid a big disaster.
Are these targets related to specific economical model, capital?
No. They are related to local policy.
Okay.
Local policies, we, government and politicians, want to stay. Look, goals are always the same. All people, governments, everything, they want two things: money and power. Politicians focus on power. They want power. They want to be in power. They want to be in the government. So for the local politician is whatever it takes to get to power or to stay in power if you got it. So if they can get away with 12% unemployment, fine. If they can get away with a 5% or 10% inflation, fine. If they can get away with stealing money out of pension funds, fine. If they can get away with, with whatever they can get away, they will do, as long as they stay in power. The ultimate priority for all politicians is staying in power, whatever it takes.
It serves the purpose.
That serves because that's the purpose, that's the goal. Next one, Slovenia. Let's see if we got Slovenia here. Israel. Well, what the hell?
Θα πάρει 30 χρόνια να μας φτάσουμε, μην ανησυχείς.
All right, Slovenia. Okay, let's shrink a little bit.
Είναι επειδή λέει και που και που για μια μαλακία.
Γιατί δεν συμφωνείς με αυτό.
Okay, so I think this is, okay, we can shrink this a little bit. We can,
52% of...
all right, let's see, let's just look what happens with Slovenian investment. I'm curious. 28, 31, 31, wow, 22, 21, 2018. Apparently, Slovenian economy is suffering. It is. By investments, I can see that investments are showing the economy is in serious trouble. So, 30%, 32% of the economy was investments and shrunk to 18. Basically, investments have gone in half, okay? 50% less investments. Let's see what happens to unemployment. Unemployment, 6, 6, 6, 5, 4, 4, 5, 7, 8, 8. Oh, unemployment's not really bad. Yeah? So, unemployment is holding fairly well. Let's see what happens to GDP per capita. 10, 11, 11, 12, 12, 11, 11, 12. Standards of living is still holding okay. So the Slovenian economy at least is holding okay on employment. It's holding okay on the standard of living. Let's see what happens with inflation. Inflation. 2, 3, 5, 0, 1. Is inflation a problem? According to the to data, inflation is not a big problem. Now let's see what happens to the external trade deficit, current account deficit. Fairly balanced economy, fairly balanced, and not a big problem. So the overall economy is very balanced. The externally. Let's see fiscally. Government, general government lending and borrowing. Government's fairly stable. Crisis comes, 5% deficit, 5% deficit, 5% deficit, close to 5% deficit. This means that the government is compensating by, in other words, instead of income to fall by 5%, the government is increasing by 5%. Well, what about debt? And you can see what's happening to debt. You see, 2020, 2020, 2020, 2020, 2020, shock, 35, 38, 46, 53. So, what the government is doing is holding the employment, okay? it's holding the trade balance okay, it's holding the GDP okay, it's holding the standard of living okay, by massively piling up debt. So, is the Slovenian economy in trouble? The answer is no, because 50% is not a trouble. What's the number from trouble from last time?
Around 70?
Around
60.
90%. If the government gets between 90 and 100, it's on the border of crisis, becomes unsustainable. So 50, 60, 70% is called manageable. It's okay. It's not going to lead to disaster. But 3 more years like that, and then you're going to get in trouble too. So the Slovenian economy has got to get this big problem resolved one way or another. In other words, it's a problem that's building up, but it's not a crisis yet. In other words, if a government like the Slovenian has only 20% debt, it can run debt for 7, 8, 10 or 12 years before it reaches a crisis proportions. So it's not there. So the government can, so the economy can hold for 3, for 4, for 5 years, but it's unsustainable, and here's the key. It is unsustainable based on 5, 5, 5, and 5%, or almost 5% deficit. Okay?
But we are panicking. We
Pe-
are panicking.
in the sense that people are waking up, economists and the government, and what's the result? Are you guys going to shrink your deficit? Are you talking about the deficit?
We are talking about the deficit.
Okay.
But we don't know it what to do with our national bank, which is suffering. So that
Now, Slovenian, you now have euro, right?
yes,
So you have the euro, and what's the problem with the national bank? It's not like bankrupt or what?
that.
Ah.
So now we are trying to fix. This is because of the main national bank.
So now I see it's the same problem with as in Cyprus. This is the fundamental problem of most governments. The banks, you had a huge real estate bubble. The banks financed this huge real estate bubble. Now people can't pay back the real estate loans, and the banks are in trouble, and probably the banks got bailed out by the central bank, and now the central bank or the national bank is in trouble. Something like that.
It's a main national bank.
Yeah, the main national bank is the same as the central bank. We've also called it in Bulgaria, we call it Bulgarian National Bank. That's the central bank of Bulgaria, okay? So, it's the same thing. So, no, we are not in trouble. I'm just saying is the national bank is the same as the central bank. Well, there's not much. You got to take your losses one way or another. I mean, if you don't know, guys, what to do, I'll tell you what to do. Swallow the bitter pill. Take the loss and move on, okay?
The idea is
But the
to,
government doesn't want to do that, right?
but the idea is to create a bad bank.
Yeah, this is all the politicians' dream. Every politician thinks that investors are stupid to buy into the bad bank. Okay, and this, we have a special term in English, we also use it in Bulgaria. It's called sweeping the dirt under the carpet.
Yes.
Yeah? So that's what the bad bank is. A bad bank doesn't solve a problem. It concentrates the problem in one place. That when the bad bank blows up, the government blows up. And then the central bank blows up. And then the economy blows up. So you are essentially accumulating the problem instead of dealing with it. You're only talking about it, what to do. You call it debating, right? Yeah.
What was interesting was the reaction from people, like
Okay.
me and normal.
Okay,
people.
what normal people say?
There was an idea to take out all the money from the bank and say,
Deposit.
this is the end.
Yes, of
This
course.
is the end. We
Of
don't want-
course. Of course, this is the best for the people. But the bankers don't want to do that because all of these bankers will lose their jobs. And the other bankers don't want to do that because people can see that other banks are vulnerable and people will start watching the banks, okay?
These were people.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So you got to understand, you got two interests. On the one side is the government interest and the bank interest, which is always linked together. And on the other side is the people. When there is loss, someone's got to get screwed. And the banks want to stick it to the people by sticking the loss to the government, and the government's going to tax it out of the people. All right? Well, what people say, no, we don't want to take the loss. We want to take the money out and let the bank go bankrupt, and let the bankers take the loss, and let the creditors of the bank take the loss.
Yes.
And of course, people intuitively sense what's right for them, but the government doesn't want to do what's right for the people. It wants to do what's right for itself and for the banks.
Because we are living a little bit of economic enlightening,
Yeah.
also political enlightening.
Yeah.
So we are of the idea that the Slovenian mini revolution
Yeah.
politically saying we don't need the government.
Well, the thing is, Slovenian means you're Slavic, and you're by nature and genetically, ethnically, culturally Eastern Europeans, and you want to be like Western Europeans, but you're still by nature, ethnicity, culture, thinking Eastern Europeans. Anyway, let's get back to any other questions on the.
Yeah, classic. How
Yes.
do you see in relation to all these indicators also a significant drop on exports?
Yes. Oh, very easy. Okay, Slovenia is exporting what to whom? Well,
Germany.
they're
Oh.
exporting a lot to Germany, so it simply means German economy is suffering. Slovenia is doing a lot of exports of services to Italians, right? So Italians are in deep trouble. So a collapse in exports means that the export partners, whoever is buying from them, is getting in trouble. Italians are getting in trouble.
Is this the reason why also government is forced in a way to borrow money somewhere?
No. Government's
So
supposed
they
to
cannot
borrow
collect
money.
revenue
No,
with that?
but government is supposed to borrow money because the government is not getting enough
Revenue,
revenue,
correct.
and it's not getting enough
But these
revenue.
are the revenue makers, the export companies, or not?
Yes, so that's the one reason, and the other reason is that the government is simply spending more. So if the government expenditure is rising and the revenue is falling, you got, the knife is opening up. So basically, it's actually called the scissors opening up. And the government's got to fill it one way or another.
What are these people spending money on? I don't understand. Where is that money going?
What do you
You
mean?
don't see it. You don't see it in a daily life.
What do you mean? Well, you don't see it because they give it to the banks. Because they're trying to figure out what's the problem with the bank. Because in Cyprus, the government created the money and gave it to bail out the bank, right? That's why you don't see the money. You don't see the money because the system is rigged. It's not that you don't see, the people don't see the money. The bankers see the money. You see the difference? The bank sees the money. The bank gets the money. People don't see any of it. The bank see it. That's how the system is designed. The system is designed to support the big banks and to support the government. It's not designed to support the small people. All right, let's take a look at Israel. Any other questions on Israel? Last one. Let's see, where's...
The government is not serving people anymore. It's serving banks and themselves.
Of course! What do you mean? That's how it's been for a long
Time ago.
Right? I will not go for election anymore. What for?
Yeah, true.
Stupid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what happens with total investment. 17, 18, 19, 20, 18, 16, 14, 17.
Oh, 19.
19.
Your banking game.
So it appears, if I am clicking correctly, that
we
the...
have strategy review in Israel next week. This is a good slide to look at.
All right, so the Israeli economy has suffered in 2009 and 10, but then it's fully recovered, or almost fully recovered in terms of investments. Now, let's see in terms of standard of living. So, 91, 93, 97, 98, 97, 100,
Wow.
100. Standard of living is not even falling. So, in terms of standard of living, right, there is no fall. People don't feel it, right? A little bit?
Little bit, yes.
A little bit. Do they feel it through
Almost salary
inflation?
increases.
Okay, let's see if they feel it through inflation.
No, the problem is inflation, but no salary increases.
Or inflation, 87, 87, 87, 19, 94, 97, 100, 100. There is some inflation.
Yes, there is inflation.
So what I see is that, let's say, from 2007 till 2012, prices went from 90 to 105, and these are the official government. So maybe 20% in the last 4 years. That's official government statistics, and probably in reality is 30%. Maybe 30, maybe 35%. So in 5 years, you probably have 5% annual, 6% annual inflation. So income stays, but the standard of living is eroded by inflation. Let's see what current account is doing. Oh, current account is doing well. You know, a little bit negative, but it's nothing. A little bit positive, nothing big. And during the crisis, it's actually running fairly well. Small surpluses, now a minor negative. So the overall economy is very balanced.
Yes.
So it's not unbalanced in either too much exports. I mean, Germany is extremely unbalanced because it relies too much on exports. Greece is very imbalanced because it relies too much on exports and can't be, of course, tourism, right?
But you can see in 2012, for example, this is a good example, I think, because there is a change in balance between export and import.
Right, 2%. Correct.
What do you mean by 2%?
Yes, the 2% is not a big deal. The problem is if it gets 5% and 8% and 12%, then it gets a problem.
Yes.
But it's just 2%, no big deal. 2%, hey, don't worry about it. Now let's see what about government, total government deficit. Well, wow, very balanced. That's a surplus. It's okay. So it's extraordinary. So what I see is an iron discipline of the government. You guys aren't just going to be spending and wasting money and bailing out people and whatnot. So you see extremely balanced fiscal policy, no more, and extremely balanced. And let's see what about debt. Debt, something very interesting. See something interesting. Very high debt, pay down, pay down, pay down, pay down, pay down. A little increase, pay down, pay down. So apparently Israel was very indebted 12, 15 years ago, maybe a result of some former war, whatever. But you have, like, from what I understand is there are 5 Israeli Arab wars, 5 wars in history.
3 minutes.
And from my understanding is apparently just whatever the problem was, and so it's been extremely disciplined, paying down debt, keeping current account balance, keeping fiscal balance. The standard of living is okay. Let's see what happens to inflation. There's a little bit of an inflation problem. The GDP is holding 6.7. The GDP is steadily growing. The economic growth is steady and growing. So a very stable, well-growing, very well-balanced economy. Inflation is a little
Dropping a little bit in 2012 to 3% from the 5% we used to have.
Yeah, I understand, but that's look. Most of the countries are just about to go bankrupt.
Yes.
They are about to get a revolution. Okay. Most people are suffering and hungry, and you're wanting from 5 to 3%. That's nothing. It's a flea bite. No big deal. That's nothing to worry about. Let me see what happens with imports. Imports 11, 3. This is where it's been a major adjustment. Here there's been a problem, and then imports are the imports are still doing okay. And what about exports? Exports 4. This is a percentage change. So exports suffered enough. Israeli economy is exporting well, and here exports are. But overall, imports are doing well.
Exports also.
Exports are also have been doing well, except for that one 2009 year. Well, the whole world had a major problem. What's the main export of Israel? Like military stuff?
Military,
Mostly.
agriculture, diamonds.
Agriculture, military,
Diamonds.
and stuff like that. So, from what I see, we pretty much covered all of the Israel. And let's see, any questions on Israel so we
Sorry,
can finish?
can you remind me, what's the definition of our government primary net, I think it's lending in
Net lending and borrowing, that's the deficit. Net lending, how much extra money the government has to borrow. This is the budget deficit. And what you see with a budget deficit here is nothing. This is just less than 1%. This is just, a major random fluctuation. If it's more than 2, 3, 4